maybe I'm an anomaly.
Ricky, you're a small sample. The point is that President Clinton ordered the FBI and the Secret Service to study some of the common denominators in school shootings after Columbine. And they found that the one common denominator was the consumption by the perpetrators of violent entertainment, most notably violent video games.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Dr. Greenfield.
The issue is you're not going to ever be able to prove 100% causality. There's still people arguing that cigarette smoking, that there's no good research that shows a causal relationship between smoking and lung cancer. And their lobbyists and the tobacco industry argued for years that there was no correlation. I like to look at it the other way around. How could you be exposed to something this toxic and have it not affect you, as opposed to proving it? The other thing that we need to understand is that when the pleasure centers of the brain are activated, which these games are designed to do, the amygdala lights up. The pathways, the neurohormonal pathways that go from the amygdala to the neocortex to the frontal lobes of the brain shut down. They literally shut off. So the areas of judgment or higher order judgment when you're in this sort of state are not accessible. And that's true, by the way, whether you're an adult or whether you're an adolescent in terms of brain development.
And Ricky, Take-Two has spent tens of millions of dollars, according to news reports, paying for advertising in media around the globe to influence behavior, that is, to purchase their game. And so here we have Take-Two and their fellow travelers suggesting that advertising can affect behavior, but playing a violent video game in which you have sex, kill prostitutes, kill cops. Now there's an uproar about one of the scenes in GTA 5 is that you torture someone with electroshock and then you pull his teeth out. Mm-hmm. Does Take-Two, how can Take-Two spend money to modify behavior and then say their game can't possibly in any instance ever influence or change behavior in any fashion whatsoever? It's ridiculous.
Right. I think what you're saying is interesting. And I do personally believe that there are problems with violent video games in regards to those who are under the age of 18 being able to consume them without parental consent or control or any sort of parental supervision to explain what is happening and talk about it. So I'm curious,
Ricky, let's get to the parental issue.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
The Federal Trade Commission, in their latest secret shopper study, has found that some big box stores will 40% of the time sell M-rated games, mature-rated games, to someone under the age of 17. Now, how is the parent? And the video game industry says they want parents to be involved in this process. If there's no parent in sight and the kid buys the game in violation of the store rules, in violation of the ESRB and the ESA system, then there's no parent there to intercept it. And then you don't, just as in my generation, you didn't tell mom and dad you had a copy of Playboy so that they'd take it away. You play it maybe at Jimmy's house, whose parents aren't as careful as you are, and so forth. So what they're doing is they aren't serious about the age rating system. And in fact, Amazon.com is selling this game, GTA 5, without even asking the age of the purchaser. So
right, but that can happen. But this isn't specific to video games. I can, if I was a child, I could go on Amazon and I could purchase whatever I wanted if I had my parents' credit card.
You can't buy age-restricted products like alcohol, tobacco, or firearms. And the industry says they want parents to make this decision, and then they sell millions of units through the internet, and their retailers don't ask the age of the purchaser.
Right. But I'm saying I want to. Luke Winkie just joined us in the Hangout right now, and he's the author of a Vice article that came out just a couple days ago. That's called Generation GTA. He's a fan of the game and he's played it since he was young. And Luke, one of the things that you talk about in your article, it's a quote directly from you that I have pulled up here, is, "When I buy my copy of GTA 5, I'll still feel a twinge of disobedient sin." Now, this is something that, for me, feels like parental, having good parents, having people around that have explained to you to a degree that this is something that is sinful, that it is bad, that you're sort of taking part in something transgressive. This isn't normal. Luke, does it still feel that way for you? And do you think that that is something that is it was your having your parents around was something that helped you separate the reality from the video game itself, or did you not need that at all?
Yeah, first I want to say I'm sorry I'm late, guys. I just slept through my alarm. But yeah, I think with
playing video games,
something like that. Yeah, I think with buying that game now, the Twinge of Disobedience Sin was just because it was so culturally, it was so ingrained in me that Grand Theft Auto was kind of like the one game that was like, that was going to bring you down, that was going to sort of corrupt you. And so to this day, when I go out and I went to like the midnight release like a couple days ago, it still felt like that if my mom was around, she would be disappointed in me. I know that she wouldn't be, but I think I think that like in terms of removing it from reality, I think that sort of happens. I think maybe when you're a kid, you're more maybe you're more inclined to believe that what your parents are saying is true, and what this game is will affect you on a deeply psychological level. When you get a little older, I don't think anyone really puts any credence into that. And I'm not saying it does, but when you're a kid, you might be more inclined to believe that just because when adults are telling you that, it feels a little more true.
Do you think someone under 17 ought to play this game?
I mean, it's rated M for mature for a reason, and there's a lot of, violence, sexual content in there.
So do you think then, since you agree with me on that, it seems, should the industry do what's necessary to stop sales to people under 17?
Right. I think they do a pretty good job of it already. I mean, the kids, there's no one there in the midnight release that was under the age of 17. The one kid that was there was with his dad.
I think
let's let David Pogler speak for a second. He's been quiet over here for a little while. David, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. No, I just think with that, that you probably wouldn't make $800 million in one day if you were really cracking down. I think the other issue with it is. If we kind of look ahead 5-10 years in the future, we're looking at video games right now as separate from novels, separate from movies. But we're certainly going to start combining a lot of those features.
Here's the important thing, though. When you say we can't let kids buy this game because it's violent and sexual, you shouldn't think of it as it's some sort of perverse thing. You should think of it in the same way as a movie. The earlier Grand Theft Auto games that came out in 2001, 2002, they were a little more arcadey. They were a little more, crazy and satirical. Grand Theft Auto 5 at this point, and basically video gaming as a whole, have come to a place where they deserve to be engaged critically, as with some sort of artistic, credence given to them.
I think that's also part of the potential problem. Carly was talking earlier about Catcher in the Rye. If you talk about that attempted assassination on Ronald Reagan, you have those issues where people could empathize with those characters. People could empathize with the Travis Bickle character. You're probably also going to see an increase of that in the future as video games kind of add to their character development.
Let me tell you why I got started in my efforts 20-some or more years ago against the entertainment industry. I represented some sexually abused women and children. And when you talk to a rape victim and you hear the role that the hardcore obscenity played in the life of the person that raped her.
Are you taking sort of an Andrea Dworkin position here, Jack?
When Andrea Dworkin was alive, I worked with her. But let me finish my point. Whether Andrea Dworkin was on board with this or not, which she was. The point is, you can talk all you want about critical acclaim and the artistic content of Grand Theft Auto 5. And by the way, the critics aren't terribly impressed, saying it lacks any humor and irony and so forth, like the earlier installations. But to have sex with a woman and then kill her to get your money back, I'm wondering where the art is in that. And doesn't that say to teenage boys, send a message that they really shouldn't have? I mean,
Jack, I hate to disagree with you, but there are many points. There are many points that I agree with you on in terms of certain types of regulation. But just to think that teenage boys are getting the wrong message here, I think we're not giving the majority of teenage. I think we're not. Hold on. I think we're not giving the majority of teenage boys enough credit. I think by the time you're teenage boys, you realize you're playing something that is transgressive, that you are taking part in something that is, quote, sinful or bad. Carly, hold on. Let's go to Carly for a second, because we are talking a lot about teenage boys now.
Yes, and again, I think, we're saying, if they were cracking down on this circulation to minors, they wouldn't have had these large sales. But again, teenage boys make up a very or let's not just say teenage because that's sloppy, because we're not talking about 18 and 19-year-olds, are we? We're talking about people under 17, or 17 or younger.
Way under
and
17.
If we start having that conversation, the percent of the overall population we're looking at is small, right? Not small enough to be driving sales. And if we look at the numbers that the industry gives out, that the ESA puts out every year on how many people are playing and who's playing, teenage boys are not the majority of gamers.
Don't you, Jack,
hold on one second, Jack. We have to wrap up out of here in just 1 second, Jack. I want to take to Carly one more time. Carly, you've been a somewhat modest proposal person within this conversation. I'm curious to your feelings about the regulations. Before we wrap up, your specific feelings about regulation in terms of video games. Are we doing enough right now to combat young people who with a sort of moldable mind from playing these games, or do you think we should do more? Should there be more regulation? Should we be attacking these games as much as some people are?
I don't think there should be necessarily more governmental regulation. We may want to look at more nuanced oversight from the industry. I also think parents need to be more educated about gaming. I think a lot of parents don't play games at all and are completely unfamiliar with them, so they're kind of turning a blind eye.
Can I give you the remedy to this?
No, hold on, Jack. I'm sorry. I have to wrap out of here. You've talked a lot and you've said some really great points, but I wanted to let everybody talk. I'm going to pull up one more comment from our viewers out there. This is from the Flume, who's sitting in the office right behind me. He says, "I bought GTA last night and played it for 5 hours. I found it very relaxing and had an amazing time. I did not get up feeling any more violent than when I sat down. Anybody who kills after playing these games has pre-existing problems that aren't the fault of the game. Period." Full disclosure, he is my boss and he's yelled at me 6 times today, so he's clearly had some issues playing that game. You guys, thank you so much for joining me and having this conversation. Carly, David, Dr. David Greenfield, Jack Thompson, Luke, thank you so much. Luke, I'm sorry that you came in late. I would have loved to have given you more time, but thank you so much for joining me and having this conversation, and I hope for HuffPost Live we gave a bit more of a sort of modest conversation in terms of violent video games and we weren't too sensational. So thank you so much. There's a lot more coming up on HuffPost Live.